Man, we're live, I think.
All right, we're doing it. We're live.
We're doing it. No, we are live. What has been
You
up?
don't?
There's been a bunch of reports released and stuff. What have you been creating?
Yeah,
What have you been doing?
yeah, yeah. You pointed me to a couple of new reports that they look pretty interesting.
I figured I
Yeah,
shouldn't bury the lead and let's just get right to it, right?
yeah.
Let's dive in.
um,
What what
but
what kind of
anything new
reports?
with
I
you?
admit I shared two and I only read one. And in terms of stuff new, I've been taking a lot of photos recently in the studio, which is
Oh
why I'm
yeah,
still stuck on this camera here instead of the normal A7R2 or Alpha 7R2, as Sony would like you to call it. But what do you get? I'm trying to take projector photos. I don't know what I'm
projector photos.
doing. I can tell you the
What's that mean?
projectors are a lot brighter now than you would expect before. So imagine I'll let the secret out here in this podcast, but imagine you had like a computer program on a website where you could give it a prompt and it would give you an image, and then you could take that image and project it onto somebody
Right.
as like a texture or on a background
Ah,
or
ah.
whatever. So I've been trying to like mix AI and photography because I'm kind of miffed about this whole AI photography stuff, honestly. And I was trying to think
Right.
like, what can I make that would be different than these? So I've been
Right.
playing with DALL-E and OpenAI and a few other apps,
Interesting.
trying to figure out what I can do to incorporate that into the studio in terms of like instead of me hopping into Illustrator or Photoshop and making stuff. Yeah,
Right.
what if they could give me like a leg up or make it easier? And then having the people I'm shooting with also get involved as well is it's pretty interesting. Yeah,
Have you done anything
nothing to
else with?
share yet, but yeah.
Have you
Sorry.
been playing around with the tools in any other way?
Okay. Full disclosure, I use ChatGPT as a writing prompt a lot. Like not 100% of the
Really?
time, but let's say like 75% of the time. Yeah. If I have an abstract or a bio to rewrite or something like that, I will feed
Really?
it into ChatGPT and then I'll use that as like a writing prompt. So I won't use it wholesale. I'll go through and edit it. And I'll tell you why. The reason is that I have a hard time getting started with writing. I'm pretty good at
Yeah.
editing and like filling out stuff once I have a theme. One, it forces me to think of the theme, which is actually the real problem.
Right.
And then the second is when I put it in, it will just regurgitate something that's like good enough for
Right.
my first pass
Yeah.
to. Because like, I don't know about you, but the first time I read a sentence, it's not gold right away. It takes
Right.
a lot of like honing and like
Yeah.
surgical moving around the sentence and stuff like that to make it better. But I've been using it for that. So for
Okay.
abstracts, titles, bios, that kind of stuff, I will certainly use ChatGPT to the point where I feel like I might need to pay for it because I'm running out of credits for this month.
Right.
Like it's actually really really handy.
And that's
That's what I've been
the
using it for.
official Microsoft paid for OpenAI ChatGPT, right?
I think it's not Microsoft, even though like listen, I think they own
I
like
mean,
some of the IP and stuff like that. But yeah, I think
it,
it's still very much like
they're the big
their
investor, aren't
app.
they?
They absolutely are, and I think they bought the IP.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So like the not the patents, but the intellectual property, which is like a weird play. But anyway,
Yeah.
we can get into the semantics of whatever that
I,
means. But
I
it
mean,
sounds like they really want to be involved in AI generated content from now on.
um, I've I've uh, I've wanted to play with it, and every now and then I start to, and I go to the Chat GPT or the OpenAI whatever
Right?
playground or the
Yeah.
those tools. I go to those sites, and every time it's like it's full. Come back another time.
It's been a little bit better recently, but yeah, it was also
Yeah.
really slow when it started to get popular, maybe like
Yeah.
a month ago or something. So you'd have to pick it at
Yeah.
like peak, non-peak times to play with it kind of thing.
Well, I just went on just today
Yeah.
after seeing there's another YouTuber, Brandon Lee, and mostly container stuff, but mostly focused, I think, on the Windows side
Okay.
and home
Oh,
lab
that's pretty
stuff.
cool.
Um,
Nice.
but he was using ChatGPT to generate Docker Compose files.
Ooh. I've
And I
heard
thought,
about it
well,
for Terraform too.
I
Yeah,
wonder what
that's
that's like.
interesting.
And so I went on and like I instantly was able to log in. I was like, okay, well, here's a bonus.
There you go.
I'm actually able
Yep.
to get in. But then I thought, well, okay, let's just throw something simple. I want a Postgres server with a Nginx front end, generate a Docker Compose file for that. And it did. It's like, well, I mean, looking through this is all pretty valid. And
Yeah.
it's amazing.
I think it might be a little bit like if I had to go and make it do like a Mesos or something like that config that I don't like,
Right.
I know a little bit but don't know enough. I think that's where it becomes dangerous. But if you know enough,
Yeah.
like Docker Compose is pretty simple, or something like maybe Terraform I mentioned earlier, something that's like a pretty simple Python script, maybe where you can
Hmm.
go through it and read it, and it's pretty easy. I feel like those are the cases where it really shines, where you're like human in the loop for
Right.
the AI, just to like
Right.
maybe proofread it or QA or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
YOLO these tools into prod, like
Hmm.
that sounds bad. But for the
Right.
ChatGPT stuff, I wonder if it's any different than like there's Copilot, right, in GitHub, and then I think there's one
Copilot and
more.
Tab 9.
Okay, I
Tab
haven't
9
heard
is
of Tab
one
Nine.
I
There we go.
it's an Israeli company. I've been paying for it for, I don't know. I keep thinking, do I really need to use this tool? Because it's like $15 a month, which seemed like really nice at the first month or two, and then I forgot, and then I saw it on my bills. Like, well, I'm still paying for that thing, and do I really need it? And so
Right,
this month I'm trying to like actually make sure, do I really need this tool? Do
right.
I need to spend
Presumably, you
15
can
bucks a month
cancel
for
it
it?
and resume when
Yeah,
you
oh,
need
yeah,
to or
sure,
whatever.
sure.
Yeah,
I
that's
think they
good.
even sent me. I think there's even a T-shirt here from Tab 9, which
Ooh,
I they I think I was on there, whether it's Slack or Discord, and I said, oh yeah, I'll take a shirt,
nice.
thinking nothing of it. And then like a few days later, I get this FedEx envelope that was express overnighted from Tel Aviv.
Wow.
Like, I don't think I needed that much, but thanks. It was
They
too small
probably
for
just
me.
didn't know
They
how to
thought I
ship
was more
it.
svelte than I am.
Possibly. I do wonder sometimes with the international shipping, because even to Canada, sometimes I
Yeah,
get stuff FedEx, and it's like, you know, you could have just set this ground, and it would have taken like a day
yeah,
more. It would have been fine. But people
right.
don't realize, like, yeah, Tel Aviv to the US might be a little bit harder, but yeah.
It's like I have when walking around the house during the day, I often wear slippers, and they're slippers from Mojave, I think is the name of the company.
Okay,
They were advertising a lot on New York Times for a long time, and I knew some people that had them, and they're super comfortable, super comfortable. They kind of fall apart quick, which is the downside of them. But I mean, they have holes that have generated within a few days of getting them, which was annoying. But
right.
they're made in Portugal, and they're shipped from London. And so you order from Mojaves.com or whatever it is, and you get
Right.
this box basically overnighted from London of your shoes. Like, I think they might be they maybe charging too much because of the shipping. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah, the
and that's probably
logistics
why
are
they
kind of
say,
strange, right?
oh, there's no returns because this is expensive stuff.
Definitely
Like
those kind
I've
of espadrilles or whatever, the sort of made to be like worn, basically worn through
yeah,
sneakers are starting to become popular, which is cool. Like
yeah.
Tom's is probably the big
Oh
example
yeah,
that people know.
yeah. It's like this keyboard. The Ergodox, it's the Moonlander keyboard. It's like, yeah,
Yep,
well, I mean, we want to make sure you're happy, but returning it, I mean, it's basically shipped to you from their factory in China, and
gotcha.
returning it is going to be like a couple $100 anyway, so you're stuck with it. You better be sure
You
you
own
want it.
enough.
Yeah,
The Moonlander, I think, is kind of like the nexus or like the goal that a lot of people like. Once they get there, they probably stay there. If it's not like a kinesis advantage in terms of like
yeah,
split programmable
yeah,
keyboards, if they need something split that's also programmable and like
right,
tented, etc., the Moonlander seems to be top of the hill.
yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Hey, we got an
But
Australian back.
oh, oh, here we go. Drifter,
Drifter,
Drifter.
drifter.
Good day. I believe this is my mother. I think we determined this
Oh, it
last
is okay.
time. Who seems to like to
Who
say
is totally into keyboards?
absolutely. I'm sure she can tell you a lot about the French Canadian layout on Chromebooks, for example, which is
Oh,
one of
interesting.
those things that we have
Interesting.
to deal with here in Canada. Is that like we have
Right.
a weird layout that's half AZERTY, but it is QWERTY.
Okay.
So imagine all of the modifiers and the ISO enter and all that stuff is all
Oh, yeah.
there, but it's not AZERTY. It's QWERTY. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
she says, of course. Yeah, it's quite difficult to get an American English keyboard in Canada.
Yeah.
It's actually easier to buy from the States in terms of like retail.
Right.
Retail, it's quite difficult to get like, just
Is it the
keyboard.
same price if you buy it in the US versus Canada? It's
It ends up being essentially the same
okay.
price. Yeah, yeah, and there are advantages to the keyboard. The problem is French has really weird quotes, and I say weird because there are
Right.
different types. If they've got
Right.
like these sideways chevrons, for example, which
Hmm.
would be right around where the what are these like squiggly and square brackets kind of thing, they're around there. And there are
Okay.
things on
Yeah.
like the alt layer, for example, like it's
Hmm.
quite complicated to get all
Yeah.
of the C with the city underneath it. There's a
Oh
lot
yeah.
going on a French Canadian keyboard because
Yeah.
it's two languages at once. But yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Anyway, well, I digress. But
Yeah.
yes, I believe she's got some
Yeah.
thoughts on the French Canadian keyboard for
Wow.
sure.
Wow.
What are you gonna do? Yeah, so we were talking about reports. Did you want to cover
Yeah.
this or not? I feel like we
Yeah.
could easily go over time though. We got to be careful. We almost need to time
Good.
box
Yeah.
ourselves. So
Yeah.
so what are we
Yeah.
talking about first and foremost?
Yeah. So the
What is this report?
CNCF put
Okay.
out an annual survey for 2022 in 2023.
Okay.
Um, and the full data is on GitHub. Although I tried to look at the full data and it was, yeah, it I guess it's there, but I couldn't figure out what to do with it. But anyway, so really you want to look at the report. And I don't understand these. I guess there's section 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, and then you go into the details below. I think. Um, and what's it about? It's about what's the overall? Oh, it's just overall experiences of cloud. It's kind of hard to know what. Okay, what was the purpose of this?
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
my first question, and I'll get the disclaimer out of the way because Datadog data is used here. I work at
yeah.
Datadog. I'll say like safe harbor. None of my views, are like listen. I have no idea what we're going to do in the future. On top of which, my views don't reflect the views of the company at all. But this survey did source some of the Datadog data, and my question was very
Yep.
similar to yours. Like what is the goal? And I'll also say that
Right.
I'm in the chat channel with Chris A, who is actually quoted later on here, and I feel
Mm,
like he'd be the best person to address this. But my question is based on what I see on this page, it's kind of like a little bit more meta. Like, why are people doing annual surveys? It's kind of like my big question. And
yeah.
specifically, what is the CNCF trying to do here? And I'll give you my answer. Like, I won't leave you hanging. I think the reason they do it is for like brand awareness, to let people know that they're relevant, et cetera, et cetera. There's also like a join button that is on the top that they
Yeah.
want you to join as a member, as well as halfway down there's
Ah,
a join like as an end user kind of thing. I think that
right.
tells them like what the numbers are, that kind of thing. On top of which, there's a bunch of projects underneath the CNCF that are part of this that they do name drop a little bit, but not as much as I'd expect actually. Having seen
Right.
that roadmap and that chart full of all of the things that are under like
Mm-hmm.
what we consider cloud native,
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting to me. I think maybe the more meta answer though is that like they're trying to make cloud native happen, and I say that
Right.
with like
Right.
a heaping amount of snark because I feel like it has happened. But the first thing said is like the year cloud native became the new normal, and I'm not sure that's correct based on the data. But we can get into it as we get
Yeah.
into there because I feel like definitely people are on the cloud for sure, and I feel like that is
Sure.
normal. Agreed. Whether or not like your Fortune 50, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 are all cloud native is where I really start to question things. And then you start looking at like the methodology and who was surveyed and where they responded from and things like that. And I feel like that kind of bears fruit essentially. So I
And
think for
I
me at
mean,
least, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, one of my CNCF, I like as I mean, the organization and what they do is great, but I feel like the name Cloud Native overstretches. I mean,
Possibly,
yeah. I mean,
possibly, because it
there are
might
a
mean
lot of
something different
things
to
that are
me
native
that
to
they
the
don't.
cloud that are not CNCF.
Exactly.
Um, and so, if something is cloud native, does it mean that it's cloud native or
No, no,
that
it means
it
it runs
fits
on
within the
Salesforce.
CNCF?
It runs on
Yeah,
Salesforce, so being the
yeah,
first cloud SaaS
yeah,
product.
yeah.
So I guess it really depends on the person, but to me, cloud native means like if hey, I was going to deploy a new app today or like start a new
Right,
team, greenfield, I would absolutely use AWS and go forward with it. And I
right,
think for the most part, the companies that you and I deal with on a day-to-day basis,
right,
100% true. Like I
right,
agree with that. But when I talk to people from companies that are maybe more traditional, like your HPEs, your Dells, your Cisco's, those kind of companies, the old guard, as it were, that are
yeah,
still making a lot of money
right,
servicing really big clients, they're saying that like most of the time they dipped a toe in the cloud, they get a foot in the cloud, but like very much so
Right.
that the legacy, like the moneymaker, is very much on-prem, and a lot of the cloud stuff is
Right.
for like
Right.
mobile apps and things like that. But like
Right.
what actually generates the revenue
Right.
is in-house, and some of it has to do with like this is kind of nitty-gritty FinOps stuff, but some of it has to do is like, is this like capex or opex? Is this something that I
Mm-hmm.
own, which is very difficult in the cloud, or is this
Mm-hmm.
something that I rent? And a lot of the times,
Right.
especially when there's like, financial, we'll say climate is a little bit different than usual. This is when these
Mm-hmm.
companies sort of pat themselves on the back, like, yeah, cloud prices are increasing, but I bought all my servers. I'm good to go.
Right.
I bought IBM 10 years ago, and those servers are still kicking, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like, I understand what they're trying to say in terms of being cloud native, and very
Mm-hmm.
much so. I think that for the most part, North American companies will look to the cloud for new developments. But I do
Right.
feel like there's a large section of the market here that which is not represented in the survey that may be on-prem. And I'm not like an on-prem
Yeah.
apologist. I've done my time. I'd prefer to use on cloud as
Yeah.
well. But I feel like when you're a cloud native, organization doing a cloud native survey, I feel like the answers
Right.
might be a little bit skewed towards the cloud. Just a
Right.
thought.
And not necessarily just, I mean, again, is this about cloud, or is this specifically about Kubernetes and all the tools being built by or
Right.
within the CNCF organization, which
Right.
is not all of cloud?
Right, and of course we love to argue semantics. I mean, our whole
Yeah.
industry loves to, but I feel like you're right. That absolutely is the case, because I think what they're
Yeah.
trying to say is containers, Kubernetes, and
Right.
a little bit of CI/CD,
Right.
GitOps, and some of the security
Right.
stuff
Like
is
I would
what.
definitely count cloud native being a pure not associated with this, but cloud native. I mean, building an AWS, building a Lambda that runs on AWS,
Right.
it's native to the cloud. Is it
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
CNCF project? No,
No.
but
Yeah, in terms of the project
so
stuff, I think they're kind of distancing themselves a little bit from
yeah,
that, at least in the beginning. But then again, it comes into play, and it's not
yeah,
like it lacks focus or anything like that. I think it's there, and I don't want to say like
right,
narrative or anything like that, but the thread that goes through it, I think, is what they're trying to say is like,
yes,
it's like, here is the state of the cloud. It's kind of
right,
what I'm getting at. This is like, here's where we are. Here's a checkpoint. This year versus
right,
last versus the year before, that kind of thing.
right.
This is where we are at this point in time for containerization adoption, Kubernetes adoption. I don't think Docker was mentioned in here at all, for example. No
Yeah,
capital D, no lowercase d. Like, I did not see that word in here, which is
yeah,
yet another indicator to me, right? Like, and listen, again, I think it's Morantis that's got Docker, which is now, help me
right,
out here, Moby, the Moby
right,
community stuff, as well as Docker Enterprise. Like, neither of those is introduced. We're talking
right,
mostly about containers. So like Container D, I think, was mentioned once
right,
or twice, but that's kind of it. Like, Docker's not in here at
yeah,
all. And we were talking about Docker Compose earlier, right? Which is still like, a lot of people do use this for local dev because it's just easier than setting
right,
up Kubernetes and getting things running. But that's also not mentioned in here, and I do feel like it's a popular workflow.
yeah. So let's get into it.
All right, so we talked about I guess the top point is the
We
year
kind of
cloud
talked about
native became
methodology. Yeah,
the new normal. Yeah, which is
yeah.
like, okay.
Okay, sure. It's like this is the year of the Linux desktop. This no, this year. This is the year of the Linux desktop. And the next year, no. Okay. We said it before. We've said it for the last 20 years, but no, this year. This is the year of the Linux desktop.
Have I ranted about this before? I can make it short and sweet, but like, once everything we do moved to the browser, that's when that was the year of the Linux desktop, and I think that was like 2014, 2016. Like, once everything became like web native, then
Mm-hmm.
the desktop didn't matter. So you could have like
Right.
Chromebooks, you could
Yeah.
have Android, you could have iPhone. You didn't need an app store. Like, that revolution, I feel like, really skewed it. And now
Like
I think
I
the
there's
year of the
no
Linux
way I
desktop is
could
back.
live purely on the web.
Really?
There's enough tools that I need to have on my local machine.
This feels
I
like a
mean, the
challenge.
first one, the biggest one is Final Cut, or if you want to use Premiere or DaVinci or whatever the tool is
Right.
that you want to use. I mean, there are some that live up in the cloud, but
I like
I
this.
think,
So
yeah,
so maybe not Linux on the desktop, but what is like a cloud native like desktop? It's got to be web based,
yeah,
and we're not there
yeah,
yet, right? I think we can determine that we're not there yet. We're
yeah.
we're close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about servers
So
and clients then, I think, in this report to put a fine
yeah.
point on it. All right,
Um,
so point
no,
one of
the
three, I guess, is
yeah.
methodology. So what
So
did you think about this
demographics.
section?
Oh,
Yep.
what are we?
Yeah, we can skip over
What?
methodology. I think that's pretty simple.
Um,
They
yeah.
got rid of, I think, 2,200 people, 2,300 people. They got rid of about 100. So they get down to roughly
So
2,063, actually,
so
exactly 2,063 people.
I use a plugin in my browser called Memex, Memex World Brain or something like that.
Okay,
And I've used it for a while. It basically allows you to annotate articles, and then it submits or saves it to its cloud thing, and you can synchronize that to Readwise. And then
very
I
cool.
have a plugin that I created that will synchronize Readwise back to my Obsidian Markdown, database. Um, but and so it's a nice. I don't have to click anything to make that happen. It just synchronizes and they show up as notes on my
Very
desktop.
cool.
Um, but one of the newer features in it was in within Memex is being able to select some text and have it summarize using ChatGPT.
Oh, interesting. There we
So
go.
that's pretty neat. Except I highlighted this first paragraph. Our final sample size was,
Right.
and it said something like the answer is 1992.
I wonder if the math is wrong.
2063 somehow 20 taking away 53 and 20 from 2286 is 1992, or I guess maybe it's from 2063.
Yeah, there's
I don't
also a
know.
plus minus 3% confidence,
Yeah.
like error rate. So maybe that's it. So it's
So
minus
yeah.
3%. So like, okay, that's
So
fair. So we'll say roughly 2,000 to round it
yeah,
up for the
2000 ish.
humans.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good.
So 2,000 respondents. Then we get into the demographics. So as expected, North
And
America,
I
Europe.
one other
Yep,
thing that's interesting. I mean, Dynatrace I know well. I mean, I used
yep,
to do plenty of events where I'd see the same person from Dynatrace show up there too.
yep.
And Buoyant was a new. I mean, I know it's Linkerd,
Right.
but it's interesting that they're another provider of the data. I just found that interesting. It's a company name that I haven't heard as much, even though I know Linkerd and Linkerd has been important for a while. But I just thought that was interesting. Buoyant. I mean,
Yeah,
out of all the companies to pull data from,
for
Buoyant.
sure. And I started to think like who would know the Kubernetes landscape in terms of like something
Right.
deployed inside of it, and then I tried to think like is
Yeah.
it Nginx, like what kind of controller is it? Is it
Right.
Istio? Is it Linkerd? Is it something else? So I kind of get that.
Right.
So what they're saying is
Yeah.
like maybe a service mesh is a certain maturity level possibly in
Yeah.
Kubernetes. That's
Yeah.
pretty Kubernetes specific when we're talking about Buoyant.
Yeah.
And also it's like a specific flavor of the service mesh
Yeah.
within Kubernetes.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of where I got. So maybe like
yeah.
there's just no good source of data outside of this, or maybe
Yeah.
like in terms of
Or I mean, you
content.
need to get so much data from all these companies, but then you're just inundated with a huge amount of data, and it's hard to make any sense of it.
Absolutely.
So you need to choose your battles, or whatever the right term is. um, but yeah, and then so regions of organization had. Okay, so these are the respondents. Respondents belong to different organizations, and this is where they're all from, and most of them are U.S. Next comes Europe, and then everything else is smaller than Europe.
Yeah. Which again,
Which
not to pick on them, but I do feel like when I talk to people from some of these regions, like when we talk to people in India and Japan,
mhm,
South America, where things are a little bit more like cost conscious, I
yeah,
do feel like there is actually a lot of on-prem still
yeah,
because of prior investment or what have you. And it's not that
mhm,
they're like lagging behind or anything like that. It's just that their spending cycle is different. And the
right,
rate of startups may be similar, but the funding of the startups may be different as
right,
well. So the appetite for the cloud services could be different. I don't know. This is just sort of a knee
yeah,
jerk reaction, but I do as something cloud native CNCF is kind of like I would say primarily North America and Europe when I'm following the
right,
repos and seeing the people responding. That's what I'm seeing as well. So it's indicative of
yep,
this community. But unfortunately, I feel like these communities are basically like wealth centers And because of
Yeah.
that, the wealth centers are spending money on the top tier services for things like,
Right.
cloud gives you a lot of stuff in terms of like multi zones and availability and regions and failover and backups and all that nice stuff that you get that's really hard to do in house. But if you've got like a minuscule budget, a lot of times you'll end
Yeah.
up with like your prod server is like prod one and there is no prod two kind of thing. That's it.
Right.
It's this one Snowflake server, you can't get rid of it. And that wouldn't necessarily fly in the cloud, but it still is working for some of these companies. So
Yeah.
that methodology that we know that's tried and true from like 20 years ago is definitely still around and hasn't gone.
Hmm. What
Uh,
I mean, so one of the other things I'm thinking about when looking at this regions, um, cloud native for me, meaning, okay, up in the cloud, and there's different cloud providers. There's Google and Azure and AWS, um, and then while looking at things like this, and I definitely live in the cloud. I'm using a lot of
get your head in
tools
the
that are
clouds.
there. Yeah, totally. But then you read enough reports of or news articles about, based on deals that maybe Google or AWS or whatever have done with local municipalities,
Right.
and now because of those deals, those data centers are now consuming 80% of the water for given that
Right.
certain city has access to, all for one data center for all the cooling. And so, is cloud native a good thing?
No, I hear
Yeah,
you. And at the very least, I know AWS is starting attacking this on the front where they're trying to be like water neutral by, I thought it was
yeah.
2026, as well
Hmm.
as like carbon
If
neutral
there's
and
any left.
power neutral. Well,
Yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah,
there's plenty in Canada.
yeah.
Feel free to start more data centers here. But I think the main goal is that they don't
Yeah,
want the environmental impact of their data
right,
centers to be yet
right,
another, basically a sink to
right.
people to do computing and essentially like
Yeah,
leave the earth dry, which is obviously bad. They're under fire
right.
for, at the very least, the carbon neutrality, which I think they're trying to get to. But on top of which, we're talking about like, yeah, power, energy, water, all that stuff comes into play in terms of
Hmm.
what they need. It's quite a difficult problem, but it's good to see that they're at least trying. And a lot of the companies
Yeah.
that they're talking to, at least when I talk to AWS, they say the companies that they're talking to are also asking them what their plan is because
Hmm.
they've been asked to make sure that their partners are also carbon neutral, are
Right,
also
right,
like, consuming energy properly, using water
right.
properly, that kind of thing. But yeah, were you speaking specifically about the regions? Do you think that would be more difficult in these
I
regions, or is it
wonder.
fun to do globally?
I mean, without knowing enough detail, are water resources as available in? I guess they would be.
Gotcha.
I don't know. Are they as available in countries that I might stereotypically think of as more arid, in
There's
Africa
a
or in
lot of
India?
coastline. I'll tell you that much. If you
There
look
is
at
more
this map,
coastline. Yeah, that's
the,
true.
the white area is
Yeah,
so basically wherever the water is. I think the main thing
yeah.
is whether or not like a lot of it be like hydroelectric or for
Yeah.
cooling.
I do remember
Um,
seeing like Azure doing, and probably all the clouds, but I remember seeing an article about Azure and having data centers basically in large containers that are submerged in the sea, um, and experimenting with that idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing here that was interesting to me is like the top three job functions that they had. So the first
Hmm.
one being developers or engineers, like makes sense to
Hmm.
me. The second one was managers and directors or VPs,
Hmm.
which I thought was interesting. The third one really took me off guard. So C-suite executives were the third most
Right,
popular job function respondents, which is like
right.
that's a whole other thing. What level of
Yeah,
insight they have into a company's appetite for being cloud native is like there's
yeah.
aspirational goals and then there's like what
Right,
you've actually done, which is another problem
right.
with these surveys is like what you want to do versus what you are doing is something that's
And
quite difficult.
I would love to know, I mean, C-suite executive,
Right.
I mean, for those people, what percentage, I mean, the next thing we see is organization number of employees. What
Right.
percentage, or where are those where are those people from? Are they from the 1 to 99 person companies, in which case they probably have a really good idea of the technology actually being used, or are they from the 5,000 plus where they have no idea what, I mean, because it's not their, they shouldn't have to know this stuff. They should have employees that are taking care of that for them.
Absolutely.
The
Now
the
this
the
is where I'm
implementation
glad we
details.
have a podcast together, because like I absolutely thought the same thing. What
Yeah.
I want is a Venn diagram for almost
Yeah.
all of these questions and answers.
Yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
did look at the CSV because of course that's how you share data in the open source world. There is a PDF that goes along with it if you do want to open it up and start
Okay.
doing that. But I do feel like an actual Venn diagram is what we need.
Yeah.
Some of them are circles within circles, so subgroups. Some of them there may be no link at all. So
Yeah.
there's also like when you're at 1 to 99 people, you might have a couple people in the C-suite, but chances are you
Right.
get one, maybe. Uh,
Yeah.
100 to 999, maybe you got five. The likelihood
Yeah.
of you having people in the C-suite at 1,000 to 5,000 people, like 100%, you can have someone who identifies as C-suite, and
Yeah.
at that level, depending on their technical maturity, we'll probably be able to answer these questions. But that's
Yeah.
sort of the question. So like, if it's 1 to 99 in their C-suite and
Yeah.
they're answering this, and then this is a tech startup, like
Right.
straight up.
But then again, I mean, it depends on the company. I mean, if I think of a 5,000 plus company, and like or 50,000 or 100,000 plus company, I think of like the major companies that are not in the technology area, like I don't
Right,
know, like a Ford or GM. I doubt
right.
that they have any idea what technology stack they're using. But
I,
then
I bet
again,
you
a
they do.
5,000
Well, if it's a CTO, I bet you they do. But
or
Ford's
well,
maybe
a
a bad
five
example.
thousand plus company, when one 5,000 plus company or 4,000 to 5,000 plus company that we both know about, Datadog. I mean, I know that the two founders, the two chief executives, Olivier and Alexei, I am 99.999% sure that they really know the entire stack and they know exactly what pieces are in there. So I don't know.
Yeah, it really does depend. And then the question is like,
Yeah,
when we say C-suite, do you mean CIO? Do you mean
yeah,
CISO? Do you mean CFO,
right,
CEO?
right,
And it really
right.
depends on the industry as well. So I think what
Yeah,
I'm getting at is that there was a lack of like industry in here. Like I didn't see
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
I would like to see people outside of the tech industry answering these. So because it wasn't mentioned, I assume that most of these are tech industry respondents,
right, yeah,
or people who are industries that are very much tech influenced. So when we're talking about Ford,
right,
like to throw them a bone, like honestly, I do feel like Ford is
yeah,
becoming more and more of a tech company. Whenever I talk to the
yeah,
automakers, like they're very much concentrated on tech
sure,
because their cars are full of computers now. So it's very
yeah.
important to them.
And then
All right.
CNCF end user technical experience.
Yeah.
So interesting. Just yeah,
Yeah. I
interesting.
don't remember. Do you remember like at 6 years into your career, were you trying to do new things? Were you trying to get promotions? Like I was definitely trying to get promotions at 6 years in. So I would do like
Yeah,
resume driven development. Have you heard this before?
right,
RDD. So you pick up the Kubernetes, you implement it, and you
right,
quickly move on because you didn't really know what you're doing. But you put a feather
right,
in your cap, you get a promotion, you move on to greater
yeah,
things. You find the next hot new thing that's not a sure bet, maybe close. You align yourself to the community, you try to implement
right,
it at home, and then get the next raise kind of thing and move on. But
yeah,
I feel like the at least for me, that the people who are adopting the newer technologies and pushing them forward, generally having the more success are going to be like your 6 to 10, or
right,
your more to 10 years. Your senior people, essentially.
right.
Probably not your
Well, six
intermediate
years
people.
in, 6 years in, I was working for an analyst firm and I was writing the papers and I was giving companies advice on how they
Oh
should
no,
implement technology, which is a terrible idea because I should not
exactly,
have been in that role. I knew nothing,
exactly what
and
I was
yet I'm
thinking.
telling these whole companies, "Oh well, and in fact, I remember there was a time I was we delivered our report to a company called Candle. I don't know if I think they still exist. And I was in the room with the Aubrey Edwards, I think it was the owner of the company, and like his entire C-suite was there, and I'm saying basically using the exact words of, well, this really sucks about your product. You don't like and my boss is on a video conference call back in New York, and it's like, oh my god, what's he doing? What's he doing? He's killing us.
On it.
And the whole time, Aubrey is I think his name was Aubrey, in the back corner saying, just loving it. Just it's like so many people come into us and just say what we want to hear, and you're the first
Right.
person that was honest to us. So this was great, and everybody was basically agreeing with what I was saying. So thankfully, thanking that, are excited that somebody was able to tell Aubrey that what the truth was. Um,
Right.
but uh, but but that I think that's yeah, nobody, they shouldn't have really been listening to me because I knew nothing. But
I feel the same way. Like at 6 years
yeah,
in, I thought I knew everything, and I can definitely recommend stuff.
yeah,
But the ability to execute was certainly missing as well. Like the
yeah,
way to like get buy-in from leadership in order to push something like
yeah,
Kubernetes, or maybe moving all your databases into Kubernetes or into
yep,
containers even, would have been like a lot to bite off and chew
yeah,
without like having an engineering manager or something like that.
yeah,
We're generally at like it. Listen, you can get some that are 3 years in, but generally you're gonna get around the 8 to 10 years in.
right. So, key findings: containers are
Hmm.
the new normal. Okay, yeah. I mean,
Which I think I
I don't
agree
know
with.
about new. I mean, they've kind of been becoming more normal, and I mean, it's taken it's slowly achieving this normality. Yeah, I'd say so. WebAssembly is the future.
Sorry. So the
Sure.
container stuff, I feel like there's a big gap in my memory, maybe
Yeah,
about 3 years long, roughly, that kind of like compressing.
yeah,
But I feel like 3 years ago, right around 2020, is kind of where I think containers were considered normal. It's when Microsoft
hmm,
started to put containers into their operating system,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. And they've got them now, but like that's when it was hitting mainstream adoption. I think
right,
the main thing was that it works on my machine kind of is what
right,
we're trying to attack. Like instead of zipping up stuff and shuffling them about, what if we had a container definition that we can move around? I feel like that's sort of when the rubber hit the road, and that would have been like 2018, 2017 is kind of
hmm,
when that started. And it got adopted so quickly
yeah,
because of the company that's not mentioned in here, Docker, which I still find
right,
incredible.
right,
Um, that was like, it was a mainstream name that when we talked about containers, it was always Docker containers, or like the
right,
Docker file kind of thing. And that
right,
that definitely did hit like mainstream adoption. People all knew
right,
Docker, all knew the logo. DockerCon was massive, that kind of thing. So I feel like when
right.
DockerCon became a big thing, it's sort of when this started. But
Yeah.
that was a while
I
ago,
mean,
right?
I think
DockerCon
of
was massive in 2018.
yeah, and I think of the big change that happened that made Docker from this cool technology into something that was actually usable.
Right.
Really starts when Docker Hub
Totally
starts,
agree.
and sharing
Totally
the
agree.
ability to share these containers with the larger world in an easy way. And within probably a year or two after that, then let's build up the popularity of it, and normalcy kind of starts around there. And I don't know what the when the because Datadog has the container report,
Yep.
um and
And the fact that
so
we do it kind of like it again, like you wonder about questions and stuff like that and relevancy and things, but is there the corollary to me when reading this is like, is there a WebAssembly report that I just don't know of, that I haven't
mhm,
seen? Because
yeah,
that's what I want to see. Like, what does that ecosystem look like? Where are the little tidbits that I can read? Because I think
right,
it's obvious. I like reading these reports and sort of
yeah,
digesting them and having questions about them, and I'm happy learning about new stuff, reading through like a white
right,
paper or like a 10 pager or whatever. Totally
yeah,
fine for me. I haven't seen that from the WebAssembly side, and it's been around for a bit. Like I know maybe more about the Blazor stuff, which is like the Microsoft
hmm,
equivalent, but I think they're very similar to what we're talking about
yeah,
here. And Blazor definitely got hit within Azure, but whether or not it's a mainstream hit within like the Microsoft community, I don't think is true yet. And that
yeah,
to me at least, because Blazor is actually pretty revolutionary for the Microsofties, just in terms of resource usage and the
hmm,
ease of use that you get of it. Very portable code, which is actually super nice.
hmm,
But I'm still not seeing that being mainstream. I'm seeing it as something people want to try and dipping their toes in, and that's what I see in this report. Whether or not WebAssembly is the future is a little bit hard for me to
right,
stomach right now. But I do feel like something similar to this will be the future. Again, like that packaging
yeah,
that works on the web everywhere. Definitely
yeah,
agree. Whether or not this is it, tough for me to say at this point in time. But yeah, I mean, good on them for predicting. Because
yeah.
like,
So one video that I have been meaning to watch but I haven't
mhm,
watched, and its relevance I'll mention later on. But Brett Fisher's DevOps and Docker Talk
mm,
did a interview with Nigel Poulton a couple months ago, and the topic was cloud native WebAssembly.
gotcha.
This is like exactly the topic here,
Yeah,
which I think is I need to watch that video.
absolutely. And then we kind of get into like how are containers used within your organization. And what I
Yeah.
found interesting is that like not half, but close to half are using containers in prod. I actually thought that number was low. Again, with the assumption
Mhm.
that this audience is mostly technical, so I was kind of thinking
Yeah,
like, what are they deploying? And like, is it still
yeah,
VMs? And if they are VMs, like, is it jars? Because jar is it's
yeah,
not an answer to Docker, but it's kind of
right.
similar. And maybe if you've already got like a jar or a wire that you're or whatever that you're shoving out there on a regular basis, like maybe that makes sense. Like maybe you
Yeah.
don't need Docker because it doesn't give you any
Although
benefit over it. I don't know. I
is
don't agree, but
because of the background or the people asking this question, are they saying that containers is not Docker, but rather containers in the Kubernetes way of doing things? And so how are containers on Kubernetes used within your organization? And the 44%, well, maybe that's
gotcha.
closer
And
to
this is
real.
where they reference the Datadog report, and I think we talked about that a little bit
Mm,
before,
mhm.
where you and I did notice it was a little bit confusing whether or not we were talking about specifically like a container on a VM or a container in Kubernetes. And is a container in a VM, which is Kubernetes, is the same thing, and like that became a
Right.
little bit difficult to understand. And I think
And so,
because of that, it sort of like carried over into here. But I feel like it's
yeah, in
just
fact,
containers, be they on
they're
VMs or in Kubernetes.
well, just above this point in the post, it says Datadog in their 2022 container report found that nearly half of all organizations using containers run Kubernetes to deploy and manage at least some of those containers, which is what this is
Yes,
saying. So
it's like
it's
it
not
gets a
about
little confusing.
containers, about
Like some
containers
of
on
them.
Kubernetes.
So we get the Venn
Yeah.
diagrams, like definitely both sides of these use containers. I guess the question to me is like, so Java is kind of a unique use case to me at least, in that it kind of packages everything up together. In
Hmm.
Python could zip stuff up maybe. In JavaScript, there's ways of
Right.
doing it, and then we talked about WASM, but we're getting into like the application delivery kind of aspect. And I
Right.
feel like container is the answer for most, if not all,
Yeah.
questions. Like this is sort of the
Yeah.
the flat pack revolution for deploying an app on some sort of
Right.
operating system. Like instead of going down Debian flatpak as I mentioned, or PFPM or something like that, like this is what we're going to be using going forward. So the question I've got is like, what are they using if not containers?
Right.
Like I
Right.
do really wonder, especially when we're saying like at least some in your organization, like how does this it doesn't like does it add up to 100? I don't think it adds up to 100. You know what I mean? Like, where's this small little isolated circle sitting off
Right.
outside
Yeah.
of the Venn diagram, and what are they doing, and why will they not do it in
Yeah.
containers? I have so many questions.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I wish that they at the beginning they say here's the source. I wish each one of these had a link to where in the source exactly is this
Right,
question.
line 44 of the
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
CSV.
yeah. Um, I mean, so I mean, yeah, uh, yeah. What are the other things? Yeah,
It,
yeah,
like maybe
yeah,
it's RPMs.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
it's jar files. I don't know. The next one I think kind of like tells us what we'd expect, right? So most
Right,
people are in fact using containers, and
right.
the pacing, the adoption rate of containers is much higher than any other way of deploying. So when we're talking about lambdas and things like that, they're saying
Right.
that yeah, it far outpaces them, and that I get. I mean, lambdas can use containers now. I think GCP has I believe it's Cloud Run that can use containers. Azure's got their oh, I'm trying to think of the term, but Azure's got another version that you can just run a container kind of thing as an executable essentially, and so does
Hmm.
Amazon. So I feel like that area where it's like just give me a container, that
Right.
that's what a lot of devs want. They just like
Right.
I've got a container, it works. Let me YOLO that into the cloud,
Yeah.
and everything can be great, kind of thing. I feel like that is the virtuous cycle that a lot of devs are looking for. Porting the thing from the CI/CD
Hmm.
pipeline or what have you from their laptop all the way into the prod. That's what they want. They want to deliver a container, and I feel because of
Right.
that, because it's so easy, this is why we're seeing that adoption. But again, this is when we refer back to the Datadog report. But I feel like when we talk about CI/CD a little bit later, we're maybe ignoring that this GitOps
Yeah.
revolution was in fact helped by things like Ansible, Terraform, containers, those kind of things all happen hand in hand. And when I think of cloud native, I'm thinking about these technologies specific to the cloud, but they're not like they could run on-prem too. We're just not seeing that other side of this coin.
Right. I One of my things I'm confused about this bar. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't figure out
some of
how
the
the numbers add
visualizations are
up.
difficult.
Like 62% of organizations with less developed cloud native containers only have containers for pilot projects, which is definitely not what, because much of our development, or nearly all development, is 65. So that would mean the what's left is not 62. I,
And I think if you read the little subtext, it kind of makes sense, but then it makes you wonder why it's on this graph. like
yeah,
like why it dovetails up into it. And again,
yeah,
I think we both get what they're trying to say. It just feels like this is it's like a tangent or an anecdote,
yeah,
as opposed to something that directly relates to this graph. It's more context. It's just
yeah,
like those little lines that point up to the area that don't add up to the number. Kind of feel like this is where a Venn diagram would
right,
be really handy.
right,
But
yeah.
that's just me.
So I did think the next one is really interesting, and I don't have
Absolutely. As
questions
someone who
about
used to be on a
the,
training team, yeah.
yeah. So what is interesting for me is the way I interpret this is that people who are new to this stuff and are still in the pilot or are actively evaluating, they don't care about security yet. They just care about learning how to use this
Right,
stuff.
right.
Security is an afterthought. I'm going to learn how to do
Still,
this. I'm going to
yep.
deploy it. Oh, I've just deployed this really important thing that I want to make sure people don't break into. Maybe I should think about security now. And so they're putting security off till way too late when they should be, okay, lack of training, yes, but also lack of training specifically about security so that I make sure I don't do
Yes.
stupid things.
Oh, you're singing my songs. Like, yes. You've got less than 6 years experience. You're trying to push containers in your
Yeah,
organization. You have no training, but you want
yeah,
and maybe I'm like self-identifying here, like
yeah,
projecting a little bit, but like you want to push this into prod without necessarily going through, like maybe you've got a security team, maybe there's like a best practice that you could, maybe you don't
right.
even know this there, you don't know what questions to ask, like without thinking,
Hmm.
is this secure? And are all the packages I'm using in this from whatever, like from I don't know, potato, like the really
Right.
old version of Debian, without thinking about the packages that are involved in the thing that you've got in your from at the top. You're just layering on stuff which also may be
Yeah.
insecure. You're shoving that into prod without testing it, and then you're getting slapped on the hand after that. And I feel like this is
Hmm.
absolutely the majority of what I'm seeing. On
Yeah.
top of which, like the deployment method for Docker, or even like
Hmm.
building a Docker file, or making Docker Compose Runner, or like I'll use a word that's not a word, but productionizing, or making something production ready
Right.
in order to get into prod. Not only do they not know what they're doing, and they includes me,
Right.
but also Kubernetes, how does that work? Some cloud technology that you're using that lands in, how does that work? How do you
Hmm.
secure them? And then we talked a
Yeah.
little bit about SBOM. I'm not sure if it was actually defined, but the software bill of materials, so like all of those packages that you require to push that
Right.
out, are you vetting those too? How are you
Yeah.
vetting them? Are you running some massive JFrog
Yeah.
instance? Have you like forked PyPy? Like, full disclosure, like
Right.
having done this stuff before, it's really expensive. And I don't mean just in terms of like licensing.
Yeah.
You can do it open source, but it's expensive in terms of overhead. You need engineers to watch all this. It's a certain size
Yeah.
organization that can actually secure this stuff properly,
Yeah.
all the way through CI/CD, all the way to prod. Like this is like one of those vendor problems that I think a lot of people are trying to jump
Yeah.
onto. It's quite Datadog's no stranger to this. Obviously, we try to help
Yeah.
too, and we've got some open source tools that will actually help here. I just feel like
Yep.
if you don't know the question to ask because of lack of training, you're not going to ask the
Yeah.
question, and you will absolutely deploy insecure containers to
Yeah.
production. And then you'll have to go back and try to figure out where you went
Yeah.
wrong, which is really unfortunate. And yeah, absolutely does not surprise me that training is lackluster.
Yeah. And it's one of the, I mean, I don't know if you've looked at the tool from the company that's not named in this report, Docker Desktop, and their new extensions, new about a year, their extensions
I did
platform.
not.
You've looked. Oh, so look in Docker Desktop. They've got on the left side there's extensions,
I
and
see it. Yeah,
well,
it's
first
really
off,
cool.
even without extensions, even with none of them enabled, you can look at a report of your Docker containers as long as you've updated the latest Docker. And it will show you what are the, it's using, I'm not sure if it's a partnership with Sneak or basically the same functionality as Sneak, but
Gotcha.
it shows you that, where are the vulnerabilities. But then you can add on uh, uh, other extensions, and there's an extension from Sneak. There's one from Trivi and some others that look at, here's the list of licenses that your container and all the components that your container is using, here's all the licenses that are in a, in that. So and turns out, like, for even a simple app, there might be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of licenses, different open source licenses that you need to be okay with. And so, I mean, it's amazing set of tools and security related tools. So for a
Right.
developer who's, building out he doesn't have to wait until, the CI/CD security tools vet your container. You can be doing it as you're developing, using the tools that you might be using anyway for containers on your
I
local
had not
desktop.
seen
Because,
this.
I
This is
mean,
really cool. And
yeah.
I'm wearing a shirt. Sorry, wrong side. I'm wearing a
Oh yeah.
Portainer shirt. So that was me.
Portainer is one of the extensions, which is great.
Yeah,
And there's all
no
sorts
idea.
of other
It's really
great
cool.
I mean, there's being able to see all your logs in from all your containers in one place without using
Great.
a Datadog, or being able to pull in all the, do backups of your containers from there. And there's a lot of really cool extensions in there. Anyway.
I like it. Yeah, it's a really good idea. I think at this point in time, like in terms of challenges, like what I've noticed in the container community is like a lack of communication, or like
Hmm.
the training is one thing, but in terms of the community, it felt like when there, what am I trying to say here? When Docker was nascent, I felt like we talked a lot more. How's that? Because we all
Hmm.
like had one subject to talk about,
Right.
and
Right.
now maybe it feels like to me that's a KubeCon thing, but that's specific
Hmm.
to Kubernetes. And there are a lot of organizations still
Right.
using containers with their Kubernetes
Right.
that might not go to KubeCon, and then they're sort of
Right.
like missing out. So I feel like the real the sphere, the ecosystem that you want to be
Yeah.
in is a Kubernetes side, and if you're not, it's if you're left out. And
Yeah.
it's super disappointing to me that like training isn't more available. The question
Hmm.
is like, it, it's the age old training
Yeah.
thing. Like, how do you start? How do you keep it up to date? And how do you make sure people know about it? Like it's
Right.
the same thing over and over because it does
And I
change on a
feel like
regular basis.
one of the best resources for training, for learning about Kubernetes or other tools, one of the places you could actually try it and play with it yourself is a tool that we used. Well, you used at Datadog, well, we used when I was at Datadog, which was Katacoda, and that was amazing. And uh, but and even people that were not paying Katacoda for that service could also build out lessons, and you could, have this working environment. I don't know how they paid for it, but I mean, Katacoda, that was, I guess, part of the problem, and that's why they accepted this acquisition by O'Reilly, and then O'Reilly's brought it completely in house, and I think even those free lessons are gone now, right?
I think they're behind a like not a paywall, but at the very least like a
Oh,
sign up for
sign up. Oh,
O'Reilly's
yeah,
online books, which used to be
yeah,
called Safari. Full disclosure, I'm a
Safari, yeah,
member. I love it, and I knew about
yeah,
Katacoda prior to it being there, and I actually like the Katacoda experience
yeah,
in it. But it is like, at least in Canadian dollars, it's almost $700 a year. Like it's
yeah,
non
yeah,
trivial, but you get access to a ton of books, and I will read easily 10 books a year, and those are
yeah.
$70 books.
Oh,
So
you
it
you
makes sense
still
to me.
subscribe? Do
I
you
absolutely
subscribe
do.
on your own, or are you?
I absolutely subscribe my own. Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I subscribed when I had Datadog cover it, but but uh, but
I
then they
didn't know
stopped.
they would. Yeah, maybe I need
Yeah.
to look into this. But
Well,
yeah, no,
when they did the
the personal
Udemy
development.
setup,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah, they
Yeah,
said,
I
okay,
feel like for me,
cut
the
that.
the personal development part is very important. Like outside of the career,
That's
I
great.
really do.
Yeah,
Like I understand that training is important, and I feel
yeah,
like you can watch YouTube videos, great. You
yeah,
can read blogs, also great. Talk to your
yeah,
peers, also great.
yeah,
I feel like in terms of rigor, there's something like Manning, maybe uh,
yeah,
O'Reilly. There's certain publishers that I feel like hit a certain bar where I
yeah.
feel like it's trustworthy. It's gone through an editorial process,
Right,
QA, that kind of thing, where it's good. And I feel like the content for containers is actually quite good within
right.
Safari, but it's also cost prohibitive. Like
Yeah,
it's not for everybody, especially early on in your career. If we're talking before 6 years, like no way. I'd go to the library and I'd read through the 3 year
right.
old library book from O'Reilly that they had on containers, but I wouldn't be reading the new edition. I'd read
Yeah,
whatever I had access to.
yeah.
I feel like we're a third of the way
Well,
through and we're almost at the top of
yeah.
the hour.
Do we want to stop, or do we want to
we
continue?
we we could do a midpoint, yeah. So maybe we're at the GitOps portion, which I feel like
Yeah,
is a whole it's a whole
yeah,
other fork in the road here,
yeah.
and I really do want to talk about it, but I
Should we
have
do
some
it next time?
thoughts. I don't have any hot takes or thought leadership, yeah, I'd love to do it next time. But I really do have some thoughts
Okay.
about GitOps, and I really do feel
Yeah.
like this could be maybe a different survey even because there's
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
to unpack here. But yeah, maybe we should roll into recommendations, and we can call this like
Okay.
part one of two. Two old dudes read a report and whine about it. Yeah.
Yep. So
So is it look around the desk time? Hey, have you bought anything new that we need to know
I
about?
did. I bought two
Oh
things
no.
that
Okay.
are easily accessible.
All right.
One, I'd say, is a yes, you need it. And the other is
Okay.
a no, don't buy it.
Nice. I like it. I've definitely got some of those on my desk.
So the first one says, I would say, don't get it.
Okay.
With maybe get it. If you're a video YouTuber, whatever, video editor that's bought into the DaVinci Resolve way of doing
Right.
things,
Right.
then this thing is pretty cool. So this
Wow.
is the speed editor.
Yeah.
It's got a jog wheel and
Yeah.
buttons for all the things that you do in DaVinci Resolve.
Is it Black Magic? It looks like Black Magic.
It's from Blackmagic, yes.
Okay.
So it's their thing. It's $400. It comes with a free studio license for DaVinci Resolve,
Which is worth what? $600?
$300.
Okay. Okay.
So, so this is good if you're a DaVinci editor. I am not, and I don't plan on being a DaVinci editor, but I bought it anyway because
you just like mechanical keyboards and jog wheels.
Well, sorry. So they there is and they made it very clear that this is only DaVinci Resolve. It is not for any other tools. But you put a piece of hardware out there that says you can't use it with anything else. Somebody's going to come along with a way to use it with something else.
It. Yeah.
And so there's a company, or there's a product called Command Post for Final Cut.
Right.
And Command Post will let you do all sorts of things. I mean, like basically it's a keyboard, like a Alfred kind of thing pops up and lets you type in what you want to do in Final Cut, and it will do it. I mean, so access to all the menu commands and all that. But then they also have interfaces, and so if you want to use your Stream Deck with Final Cut, it'll make it really easy to set up that integration.
That's pretty cool.
Or with this, or with the tangent stuff, or which are a bunch of color correction things with multiple balls and stuff. There's a whole bunch of these things that it works with, and so I thought, oh well, it seems like a nice piece of hardware. It's got a bunch of buttons that we could remap, and they're nice, clicky. It's a nice feeling device, and it's heavy. It's a heavy piece of kit. But the way that you work with it, basically with Command Post, you can do. It's amazing what they've done. And if anything, there are certain functions that are marked on here that just aren't part of Final Cut. And there's plenty of things that you can do in Final Cut that are just not part of DaVinci. So it's not like a one-to-one thing. And so you could probably do a lot of the things you want to do that are on here in Final Cut, but it requires a lot of tweaking and a lot of coming up with what are the scripts for you, and that hasn't been done for you ahead of time. So I feel like this is way too much work for me, and it's always going to be not what's on the label for a lot of these buttons. And so this is something I'm glad I bought on Amazon because I'm returning it.
Let me know when you return it, and I'll try to pick it up from Amazon warehouse. I don't know if you know that scam, but like that's where it will land. You wait a couple weeks and it will go down in price, kind of thing.
Yeah, interesting.
The cost of it seems pretty low to me because I think the Blackmagic controller, like the Resolve controller with the three sort of I don't know what they are. They kind of look like ball sort of thing. That's like double the cost, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And the only way to buy the only way to buy this is with the free license for Resolve. That you can't buy it without that. Gotcha. Or maybe you can, but it's still $400. Huh?
You didn't redeem that license, did you? Because then you can't return it. Okay, good.
No, I haven't.
You're one of those people.
No. No, I'm definitely not going to use that. Well, I don't know what serial number or whatever. So that's something I'm not going to. I'm sending back, and I wouldn't recommend. I was wondering, well, why don't I see any videos about this tool, this command post integration with this to Final Cut has existed for like 6 months. Why are there no videos on it?
Right.
Well, now I know why there's no videos on
Now
it,
you
because
know
it's
why.
not really great. It's pretty good. I mean, but I would say it's not any better than something I already have, which is this guy.
Right.
Which is the Shuttle Pro V2, which has been around for, it's been around for, I don't know, 10 years, with no changes to it. And it still works
Right.
just as great as it did before. In fact, it's probably a little bit better because each of those buttons, the tops pop off and you can put the label of what
Oh,
it
the
actually is
relabelable.
in there
Mm.
and make it customized for you, which is great.
Yeah,
So I'd say that's
totally
a better
understand.
solution. It's,
And
and it's
and
99
buying
bucks.
the relegible keys, like those look like
Yeah.
Cherry Max Cut S switches. Those are like
Yeah.
$10 a pop, having bought
Oh
quite a
yeah.
few of them.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get them a little bit cheaper. They're from Signature Plastic in the great state of Washington, of all places. But because they're American made and quality and all that stuff, and they've been around for a while, they are not cheap. So like
Yeah.
filling that keyboard up, and some of those keys look a little bit
Yeah.
different size than usual.
Yeah.
Not a cheap affair, and would take a long
And some
time
of
to
them
figure out.
are, they're a little bit transparent, so the LEDs come through depending on how
Gotcha.
you've clicked it. Now, one of the super annoying things about this, and basically about everything that Blackmagic makes, they are apparently unaware that there is a newish technology that is out there that lots of companies have latched onto and done
Well,
really great things with. It's called the power switch. To turn things on and off. There's no power button to turn this. It's
do
on.
you unplug your A10 Mini every day? Because that's what I do. Because it's blinding.
I have it hooked up to a IP addressable power switch, and
You gotta do
so and then
something. Yeah.
that is hooked up to a Stream Deck, and so I have a Stream Deck that turns on my ATEM, which is freaking annoying. Why? Why? And so now
Especially with
if I
LEDs being so bright, like.
and you put anything on top of the ATEM, right now my ATEM is kind of hot right now because there was this piece of paper on it, which is my return label for my Stream Deck or my DaVinci Speed Editor. Anyway, so that's my thing not to get.
That's one of two. Yeah. What's
Yes.
Number two?
My thing to get is this.
Oh, yeah. This looks
This
like
is the Hydrate Spark Pro.
I was gonna say
It is
fire
a
extinguisher, and I feel like I'm not wrong.
It is a water bottle. So, okay, so a water bottle that you could, I mean, you can get water bottles for, I don't know, probably get a free one if you buy $1 for buying a bottle of water, and then you get this water bottle forever.
Right.
Or get a Nalgene or something like that with a fancy little logo on it for $20. This is $80. It's an $80 water bottle.
Wow.
Which my wife has not seen it yet. I'm not going to show it to her.
Has not gone through the appropriate procurement channels.
No. So I have that. So right now you can see me up to here. Okay, so you do not get the full effect of me, and I'm a little bit
mad experience.
I'm not as svelte as I might appear on this.
You are also like, for people who aren't here, you're actually quite tall.
I'm 6'4", and I've got a number. I've got some stored knowledge on me. A lot of stored knowledge.
Fair enough.
Big,
Fair enough.
yeah. And so I know that one of the keys to losing some weight. I've known this forever. There's lots of things I could do. My diet is one thing, exercise is another thing, but also drink lots of water. Drink, the amount of water that you're supposed to drink. And that amount of water you're supposed to drink, I mean, different formulas, but basically take your weight in pounds, divide it by 2, and that many ounces per day is one possible.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Simple formula.
All right.
So that puts me at like 120 to 140 ounces of water that I maybe, let's say with 100.
Now, for the international folks, like, what is this in liters? Do I need to Google this?
It's like
I will Google it.
It's like a gallon jug of milk. I think is
3.5. That's two jugs of milk, at least 2 bags of milk in Canada, but 2 jugs of milk.
Bags of milk. Yes. Okay.
Sorry, I had to throw it in.
Okay.
3.5 liters is what we're talking about. That's
a lot of water. And or even if you go with something smaller, I mean, let's just go with 50 or 100 or whatever,
We could half it.
some
I think
some
half
amount,
is generous.
whatever it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
whatever the number is. Me remembering to drink is, I mean, I remember it for like an hour and then I forget, and then at
Right.
the end of the day, it's like, oh my god, I haven't drunk my water. Let's down
Right.
90% of my water for the day in the next 20 minutes just before
Right.
I'm about to
And
go to
try to go
sleep,
to sleep.
which is never a
Exactly.
good idea because now you got to, I mean, what goes in, it's got
We
to
have
come
other
out.
problems.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And so remembering to drink throughout the day is hard. I
Right.
just forget. And I've known this for 40 plus years, and yet I forget to do
Right.
this. And so what's nice about this water bottle is you can have it. Well, let's hold on, hold
I'll
on.
drink from my oversized Yeti cup here while you're talking.
Reminders, bottle glows. Okay. I can have basically every hour
Oh,
or
is it smart?
so. If I am behind on my water drinkage,
Yeah. Ah, interesting.
oh,
Look at
it
that.
says,
That's
"Hey,
like
you need to
party
drink
mode.
some water. You need to drink some water." Uh, and so you drink some water. I would demonstrate drinking water.
This scintillating.
So I've just drunk some water, and it will update my little chart.
Yeah.
It says I've drunk 48.2 ounces, and it's
Oh, it
way
just went
below
up.
where I
Yep.
should be.
48.9, I
And
think.
it just went up because I put the water bottle down, and it said, "Oh, you've drunk just shy of an ounce of water,"
Amazing.
and it updates my little chart. Oh my god, this is. I think. I mean, we're only 3 days, 2.5 days into it, but I feel like this is a game changer for me, and I'm actually going to be able to drink a lot of water.
So I've never
So,
heard about the weight loss thing, which actually it sounds super rational. Maybe you've got water in your stomach.
well, I mean, I think
What
the
I
weight loss thing is more about if you're drinking and you're kind of feeling kind of
right,
full, you're not going to want to
right,
snack as much. And I
right.
definitely have experienced this. If on the days I remember to drink water, I don't snack as much.
Definitely. The other thing I've noticed when I drink a lot of water is I have to stand up more often because I have to go to the washroom, which is like the true
Yeah,
benefit for
yeah,
me because otherwise I'll just sit at
yeah.
my desk the
You
whole
got to
day,
get
sort of
out.
like lean
Yeah,
back.
right.
You got to get up, definitely. And
Yeah,
I think in an office, what I would hate is if the water bottle made a sound. So it's good that it's like it's
yeah. It
visual
doesn't make
only.
sounds. It just lights up. And then as you when you put it down, it does the lighty thing to as it measures how much water it knows how much water is there, and then it measures
Gotcha.
how much water is left, and then that's what it sends via Bluetooth to the and so there's actually when you close the water bottle and take this off,
Yep.
there's this sensor
Ah,
below, and so it's just a I think it's a plain water bottle with a metal. I don't know
right.
how it's working, but there's the actual logic to it.
Interesting. That's a cool
And
idea. I will say that the sort of I say gamification. I think most people say gamification, but like the way
sure.
of making something that's healthy into a habit,
Hmm.
for me at
Hmm.
least, is like to turn it into a game. And I can even do it to
Yeah.
myself sometimes, just to like trick
Yeah.
myself. Like I'll say, hey, if you don't do this for a week, like if you don't play Street Fighter for a week and kill your hands, then you get to reward yourself with a new camera lens,
Right.
or maybe less extravagant than this. But I have
Right.
found that gamification does work for me for
Sure.
sure. And if the goal is to drink more water, I feel like this is definitely a leg up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's awesome.
I mean, with it reminding me another way, or I mean, there's another tool that's out there called Beeminder, which will, if you don't do the thing that you've promised yourself to do, basically you've hooked it up to a credit card or something. And every day that you don't do that thing, it makes a $50 donation to your favorite charity or something like that. Or it like
Whoa.
sends money to somebody along with their cut. And which I can't see why I'd want to do that. I mean, there's lots of other tools that do, like, involve your friends and then have your friend check at the end
Yeah.
but that's the end of the day. And then, oh, did
Yeah.
you drink your water? No, I haven't. Let me drink 50, 80 ounces of water in 3 minutes and have to pee
Right.
all night. So that's not worked. And so this is going, I mean, it's below where it should be because I've been trying not to drink during this because I don't want to have to say, oh, hold on, gotta go. Because I gotta go. And I've been refraining from drinking. But
I'm
This
pretty good
is
at it. I will say, like, before a webinar or even before this, I tend to hit the
mhm,
washroom twice just in case. Like, I
mhm.
want to make sure
Yeah,
because I do drink water a lot. Like, I've got this massive Yeti bottle that I drink out of
yeah,
through the day, and I think it's 2 liters. So I'll drink at least 2 liters of water a day,
mhm,
if not closer to three. Again, full disclosure, I'm quite a bit shorter than Matt is. I'm about five
yeah,
seven, 5'8" on a good day. But yeah, in
yeah,
terms of the water intake I need, I know it's at least a liter. Like, I'll get headaches
yeah,
essentially if I don't have enough water in the day, and I'm sure other people do, but like I don't know. My partner
yeah,
does not drink water all day, which confuses the heck out of me. I have no
yeah.
idea how people live without
I
water
can,
because it seems
I
necessary.
can, yeah. I mean, I have a 32-ounce bottle of water, an Nalgene bottle that's sitting by my desk all the time. And there are some days where I will fill that twice during the day. And
Right,
there are other, I will also go a week and I won't even touch the water.
right,
And the only water that I'm having is the water that's in the coffee or tea that I might drink, and that's it. And I've
right.
definitely gone for a week where I'm not really drinking much more than, you know, 16 ounces of a fluid in a whole
Yeah.
day,
This is one
which
of
is
those
not good.
Reddit threads from like 10 years ago. I think on Reddit, somebody asked, like, what is the one thing that most people don't do that they need to do? And I think the top answer was like a former
Yeah,
military person was like, people don't drink water. Like, you don't understand. You
yeah,
require water. Like, you
yeah,
need to drink, like, regardless of the amount that you think you need to drink during the
yeah,
day, you need to drink water, period.
yeah,
Like, just water.
yeah,
You don't need, not pop, not like
yeah,
just water, clear liquid.
yeah,
I found that very interesting. I kind of took it hard. I've had water my whole life. I find it very interesting. But it was like interesting to see, like I
yeah,
understand that water and food are part of, like, they're a pyramid of
yeah,
things that you need, and it's just really amazing to me that, like, most people don't get it. And when I go to
yeah,
restaurants with, like, people, they're always ordering like sodas or pop, as we
yeah,
like to call it. Like, never made sense to me because, like,
yeah,
to me, hydration is so incredibly
yeah,
important that,
yeah,
yeah, I'm happy you're on the water train. Are you going
yeah.
to join? I think it's called Hydro Homies. Have you heard of this subreddit?
I have not
It's
heard
for the
of such a
appreciators of
poster.
water. Well,
No.
because there's a subreddit for everything. There is literally one about drinking water, which I am a part of.
I will not be joining that. I don't think. Maybe in a week I will be,
I'll
because of
just start
this,
sending you the memes. Yeah, exactly,
lifestyle changing.
exactly.
But yeah, it's great, and it's a nice design. You know, the flip up kind of built-in straw. They also have the chug version, which is just a hole and you pour it down your throat.
Gotcha.
So both, and it's got a nice little handle on it, and
I see that.
it's pretty good. It's is it worth $80? I mean, if you're scrounging around to get enough money to get your dinner, no, don't buy this. This is not. This is the least of your
It's for
problems.
Matt
I mean,
only.
but yeah, it's. I mean, yeah, disposable income. Sure, do it.
Well, I also feel like things related to health I'm okay spending on. I kind of
Yeah,
give myself a
yeah,
bit of a pass. Like a $40. I think this is $40. It's Yeti.
yeah,
Yeti's not cheap. Um,
yeah,
we bought two of them that they were on
yeah,
sale. Uh, but I do feel like anything that's like health related is generally where I should
yeah. I
be
mean,
spending the money.
buying things like this. Yes, you should invest in yourself in that way, or buying books, or buying training
Exactly.
materials, or buying,
Exactly.
those types of things that are going to make you a better person tomorrow. Yes.
Or live longer. Yeah. Feel
Yeah.
better.
But if it's
Be
just
nicer
a
to
gym
others.
membership to feel good about having a gym membership that you don't ever use, that probably don't
In
want.
video game terms, of like, that's one video game. That's a PS5 game
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I have something
Yeah.
way less exciting, but possibly
Yeah.
funnier to recommend.
Less
So,
exciting than water?
less exciting than water. I know. I have found a podcast more interesting than ours. It may surprise you, that I would like to recommend to the community.
Oh yeah.
It is, I think I found out because they've been on TikTok a lot, like just little clips. And then what happened? Because I don't use
Oh, you
TikTok.
want to
Then
see
what
my
happened
dance
is
moves from TikTok? I got them. Oh, sorry.
I feel like what happens now is that, like, TikTok is sort of like where things originate and then they get reshared on like Reddit
Hmm.
or Twitter or what have you. So I saw it on Instagram. But the podcast is called Tony and Ryan, and it's been around for a long, long time. It's two Australian friends,
Oh,
a man
I
and
thought
a
you were going to
woman.
say you are Ryan and
No,
my
I am
wife
not. I
Tony.
wish this
No.
this Ryan is way more funny. In fact, I think Tony may be funnier than Ryan, but we'll leave that up to
Mm.
the viewer to decide. it just recently got picked up on Spotify as a podcast, but I
Hmm.
feel like the YouTube archives and clips are possibly the best. So Tony and Ryan on YouTube is what I'd recommend. It's laugh a minute. There's a lot of like wheeze laughing, which is maybe my style, where Tony will be like, she'll lose breath trying to like speak, just laughing. Also, there are accents,
Oh,
which to me, I realize laughing at people's accents is like very juvenile, but the Australian accent is just awesome to me. So the fact that it's funny, it's an Australian, and then yeah, it's sort of it's open to everybody. Kind of,
oh, and
it's
it's
very self-deprecating. It's
Tony
really funny.
Toni.
It is Tony Tio and I.
Okay.
These two are hilarious. Would highly recommend.
Okay.
They're renting the garbage truck for like the
I see
Spotify
that.
thing. It was the first one that I watched in its entirety, and I think what I really
Uh-huh.
liked about it is like just wholesome humor. There's not a lot of punching down or
Wow.
anything like that. It's mostly self-effacing and just laughing at funny expressions and things like that. And
Yeah.
there are some like the Australian expressions ones are some of my favorites because I don't know Australian expressions and maybe NSFW, so not safe for work in terms of the amount of
Yeah.
swearing involved in the comedy. But if you're okay with swearing, I think
Yeah.
you will love this. It's quite hilarious. That
That's
is my
pretty good.
recommendation.
Cool.
So yeah,
Oh,
I
I
don't
got
know if
one.
we need to swear on this podcast, but yeah, we
Yeah. No.
definitely need to be
That.
funnier.
Yeah. I'll look at this for inspiration. I do have one other pick though. Oh, sorry. Are
Okay,
you
what do
done
you
with
get?
your picks?
I am done. Yeah.
I have one other pick. There's another podcast I think you should all watch. All
Oh, here we go. Yeah, I was trying to tee
one
you
of
up
you.
here. What do you got?
Yeah, yeah. So I mentioned earlier the DevOps and Docker Talk, Brett
Right.
Fisher.
Right.
It's he does a YouTube stream, and I've usually just listened to the podcast version of it, usually when walking my dog, actually. Talks all about Docker and Kubernetes, and he's got, I don't know, 300 subscribers, or 300 people have taken his courses on
Wow.
Udemy for Docker and Kubernetes.
We found
But
the
I'm going to be
source for
joining,
container training.
huh?
We found the source for
Yes.
container
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
This is someone
Yeah.
tell Chris A at
Yeah.
CNCF.
Yeah. So I'm going to be joining him as a co-host on his show.
Right
So
on.
I'm excited to be doing that starting this Thursday.
That is
And
fantastic. I will tune in to watch.
I was on his show talking about infra back in November, and then that was the podcast version of it came out a few weeks ago, and then we met up at SIBO Conf in
Great.
Tampa, and talked about doing this and a few more chats about it, and yeah, so I'm going to be joining him. So it should be
That
a
is
lot of fun.
amazing.
Yeah,
Congratulations. Hopefully your
building my
numbers are
podcast
better
empire.
than this podcast. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna start like one of
Yeah,
those, where you get multi podcasts going on.
yeah. I mean, looking at his, I mean, his videos, I mean, they tend to be like 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 people watch them
Ooh,
over the
that's
course of
pretty
a few
good.
months. I think 300 or 400 show up live, which is
Those are
about
those are good numbers. Yeah,
300 more than we get.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Plus or minus 1%. Sorry,
yeah,
plus or
yeah,
minus
yeah,
4%. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Wow. That is amazing. Well, congratulations. I definitely
so
look
yeah,
forward
this will be
to
fun.
joining in. I grabbed that link as well as the others to put in the show notes.
Oh yeah,
So I'll link on
cool.
those here once we're done here.
Sounds good. All right.
All right, should we call it? We're a bit over today.
I think
Sorry, folks. We
we are a
I
bit
think
over.
we took a big bite with this CNCF thing, but I
Yes,
do
we
want
did.
to do it next week.
Yes. All right, sounds good. I'm gonna end it
All right,
now.
sir.
All right, let's
So
look
if
for
you
that
can find the end
broadcast
broadcast,
button.
where is it?